Dudes, what is happening? This is Trent, and I'm feeling blessed today. I'm feeling like a lucky man because I get to draw in whatever art style I want to draw in on my own project, and I get paid to do that. And that's exactly the topic that I wanted to talk about. Not how lucky I am, but where stylization fits into your career as an artist, as an employable artist, and should you be pursuing stylization in your portfolio if you're looking to get work in games or if you're looking to do your own comic book. This is a topic that came up in the Discord channel if you want to join in the conversation or just chill out and talk about anime or games or whatever else comes to mind. Mostly art talk in the Discord channel for Aquatic Moon. I got the link below the video. Come join us. But the topic came up and I got to thinking a lot about it, and I wanted to do a video about it because this is something that I've dealt with for 25 years. I say that I'm lucky because I feel that it's a privilege. It's like the rich kid's dream. This being able to draw in your own art style is like it's like having a Lamborghini, man. And especially if you get paid to do it. It's if you don't get paid to do it, it's not like a Lamborghini. It's like a Pinto. But also has a lot of style. But anyway, getting to the point, when I started out, I did a very stylized kind of comic book called Creed, and the style stood out at the time. But the Creed comic was so uniquely identifiable for its style that it stood out on the shelf amongst a lot of superhero comics and people who had better anatomy, probably. I could also point out other artists during that time who really stood out because of their stylization. You know, probably the strongest example would be Todd McFarlane or Sam Keith during their time. Even Rob Liefeld had a really strong style, and I'll get into a little bit more of where style comes from later in the video. But when you're doing a comic book or you're doing your own brand, having a really strong style is really essential. In fact, if you're doing your own comic or you're creating your own indie game or you're making your own brand, let's say you're building an audience, the more unique and weird your style is, the more it's going to stand out and the more people are going to go, oh, that's so uniquely identifiable as that brand that I love. But the thing is you can't really change it. You can't really just go, oh, I'm going to switch it up now. Suddenly I do realistic type of stuff. And if you think about this, like, for example, let's use an example, like current day example of an artist that's very popular. If Mike Mignola were to, if you don't know him, he's the creator of Hellboy, really amazing artist, influenced a lot of other artists. If he suddenly changed and started doing more highly rendered or painted, digitally painted, rendered materials and things, I think that the fan base would be very frustrated with him because he's built a brand. He's built a brand, and it's something that you want to consistently see from him. You want to see his monsters. You want to see these really high contrast kind of images. Because that's what we've come to expect from him. It's no different than if I go to McDonald's and I order, I'm not saying Magnolia is like McDonald's. What I'm suggesting is if you go to McDonald's, you don't expect to ever be able to order a taco because that's not what they do. That's not the brand that you're going there for. You get into a lot of trouble if you change your art style. When I say you get into a lot of trouble, I mean with your audience. Your audience is going to feel like you're not giving them what you promised. And that's mostly only true if you're selling your own brand. It would be no different than if Diablo was suddenly bright and colorful. People would be frustrated. They don't want that. So you have to think of it in terms of, are you selling your own brand to an audience, or are you trying to become a production artist who wants to work on other people's brands? If you have to make that gamble and make it early in your career. Do you want to have your own brand where you're personally interacting with an audience, your customers, sell your own brand and learn about marketing and business and all that fun stuff? Or, and these are distinctly different paths, mind you, do you want to just sit in an office with a team where you're all working towards making this other brand that isn't yours, doesn't belong to you, you get to take nothing with you and carry that for the period of time that you're employed there until they replace you or no longer need you or you decide to move on? So to use an example, who shall remain nameless, of a person who didn't do that, this particular artist was very cartoony, very stylized, and he was asked by Marvel, hey, could you change your art style to be more realistic? And he said, no, I can't. I don't do that. And they said, all right, well, we'll just give you books that don't really particularly sell. And he did them anyway, grateful to just be doing comic books, to be working for Marvel. And ultimately, those books began to sell because they were so unique, they were so different, and he became more confident in his stylization. And these were stylizations that were birthed from a lot of his limitations. He just wanted to feel good. He just wanted to geek out on something that he loved. And ultimately, that came through in the final product. So if you're looking to find your own art style for your own brand, I absolutely 100% suggest that you figure out what it is that you love to do the most. If you love those hard shadows, man, dig in and do those hard shadows on your line art on paper. Like, if that's your jam, be that jam. That doesn't make sense. But just be what you are, whatever you geek out on the most. If you love that Ashley Wood art style and you incorporate a little bit of that into your own thing, like, just be that thing that you love the most. A lot of artists, people don't realize, pull their inspiration so heavily from other influence. It's just kind of like going through a lens, and you see that when you've been around long enough, you start to see that, oh, this guy is really just inspired by this other guy, but he kind of does it his own way because he was also influenced by this manga or whatever it is. And so it's really just like finding your style or your voice really just boils down to sometimes your limitations. Rob Liefeld admitted at one point he doesn't really like to draw feet very much, so he would draw little poofs of clouds or smoke around the character's feet, and that was fine because everything else was really dynamic and intense, and so it gave him a unique identity, a brand that you immediately recognize when you look at his artwork. You immediately go, oh man, that's awesome, because you know who it is. If you're already into that, you know what to expect. If not, then you know not to buy into it. But once you pick a style, you really kind of have to stick with that for a really long time or per project. Because you've sold your audience on this consistency that you're always going to do these cool speed lines, or you're always going to do mechs and cute girls, or you're always going to draw that type of content. You have to be consistent with that. And if you betray their expectations, I mean, that's at your own risk, man. You might lose a good chunk of your fan base if you stop drawing that stuff that you really kind of drew them in with, because that's your brand. That's your McDonald's cheeseburger. Don't change the formula. Now, you might be thinking, that's nice and everything if you're a comic book artist or you're trying to do your own indie thing. You're trying to build your own brand, but that's not what I want. I want to work on these big AAA games over at Blizzard or Riot or Bethesda or wherever. And you might be wondering, where does style fit into your portfolio if you're trying to get a job on Tomb Raider or over at Ubisoft or something like that? And the fact is, man, it really doesn't. Unless, of course, if your art style that you've cultivated or the art style that you jam on, that you draw in your own brand is very similar to the game that you're applying to, in which case it's great. You want your portfolio to look like the job that you're applying to, their brand that they already have. Because your role, if you're a production artist that is employed by a bigger company, is to perpetuate the brand that already exists. You're going to walk into that environment and they're going to tell you to paint like this other artist almost every time, or paint in the style of the brand that they're selling to their customers because they can't change their art style. If you think that you're going to go in and work on World of Warcraft and make them do a realistic version, a photorealistic version of World of Warcraft, unless if you're on the cinematics department, you're probably going to have an uphill battle there, brother. You're going to have a hard time. They're going to go, why are you here? Why did you come to the World of Warcraft team with your photo bashing, your photorealistic stuff? That's not what we do. And you're going to run into a lot of walls with that. And this is true in the opposite direction, too. If you go to a company, for instance, that's making a photorealistic military shooter, and you've got a lot of stylized, cartoony stuff in your portfolio, they're going to go, what are you even applying for? Do you think that we're going to change our game to suit you? You need to be able to do what we already do. That's our brand. And you might be thinking, well, that doesn't sound very appealing. I want to be me. I want to do me. Well, guess what, brother? A lot of times doing you means you make very, very little money. The independent road is very, very high risk. You might spend 5 to 10 years really creating your brand, your unique identity. And you might garner a very, very small following that only earns you $1,000 a month, a couple $1,000s a month or something like that. And you're looking at your artist friends who went to art school or FZD. They learn to be professionals who can change their art style, and they're working on some top selling AAA game, and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, getting bonuses and going to big parties, and they're tremendous successes. And so it sounds really appealing, because it's like, hey, I'd like to have a family and I'd like to be able to take vacations. If you're building your own brand, these things seem foreign. They seem like they're really out of reach. If you're building your own brand, you have to learn about marketing. You have to learn about business. That's the catch-22 of that. And some people might point out, and I already hear you. You're going, yeah. Well, what about artists like Yoji Shinkawa on Metal Gear Solid? He's really stylized. Why does he get to be an art director and character designer on Metal Gear and Death Stranding? You might be thinking Lich. Lich is really stylized. Why is she, working on Horizon Zero Dawn? Why did they hire her for that? And my response to that is that when you're celebrity or you're famous, there are no rules. When you're a celebrity, I'll give you an example. When we were developing Diablo, the art director wanted to get whatever artist he just really liked to do a couple of drawings or character designs of the characters, whether they fit the style or not. And we wouldn't ask that artist to change his art style to fit our brand because we went to him. He already has his brand. We just wanted a little mashup. That's like a little crossover, but it's not going to shape the direction of the game. I want to clarify, I didn't work on Horizon Zero Dawn. I don't know the intention of the art director or of what that even, what her contribution was specifically. I do think it was a good decision to bring her on for some of her color palette influence and her iconic character design, which I do think does influence that game. But ultimately, the art style did turn out very different than what Loish does. But it was also a preference, and it was probably also a gamble, and there were probably artists on the team who didn't really like that stylization in their photorealistic game. And you run into a lot of that these days where there's almost two totally different schools of thought in game development about what the value of realism versus stylization. And that's another thing I wanted to cover. The last and final thing I wanted to cover for this is that if you think that there are a set of rules that are consistent across all game studios, you'd be wrong. If some tutorial guy tells you, game studios always do this or never do that, it's not always going to be truth for everybody everywhere all the time. There's no dude with a checklist that says, this art style always works, or that. These guys are trying to figure it out just as much as we are. In fact, when you get hired, a lot of your job is to figure out what people want. Every art director is going to have their own preference. Every game studio is going to have their own preference and their own intention, their own desire. We're making photorealism, so we don't value these guys who've made AAA games that are stylized. We don't even want them. But should we even discuss those rare oddities, those rare stylized famous people who get a shot at doing a game that isn't even in their art style? I mean, those are rare, so super rare instances, and I don't think that people realize those are the exception. I mean, the more common route is to try to do the brand of the project that you want to work on. If you've already decided, hey man, I really want to be doing that one particular type of game, or I really like this certain style of first-person shooter, or I really like to photo bash mechs and I want to work on games where they have photorealistic mechs. Well, then that's what you should gear your portfolio to, because you love it. You're already in line with their style and their intention and what they want. You can already deliver to their customers. Always ask yourself, can I deliver to their customer base? And it really boils down to that question. Should you have an art style? Well, are you creating for your own customer base, or do you want to create for an existing customer base, likely one that you're already a fan of or you're already in? There are a lot of ups and downs to both if you haven't realized. I mean, some people just don't want to deal with marketing or the business side of things. And for them, a studio gig is really, that's preferable. But you got to keep on the top of your game all the time, constantly be learning and adopting new art styles. And a lot of times you're really just kind of creating something or creating something within the confines of this existing brand, So there's the ups and downs of both. If you go the independent route, I mean, you're going to have to learn how to market yourself. You're going to have to learn how to expand your brand. You're going to have to learn how to advertise, and you're going to have to learn how to create a platform and how to keep an audience happy. And that can be an exhausting venture too. It's not always like it's easy, man. I don't think there is an easy route. It wouldn't be any fun if it was easy. I don't have a specific answer for you because that's something that's a personal thing for you to decide which one of those routes to go. But I have found that a lot of people confuse the intention. A lot of people will think that they can do a highly stylized thing and apply to a studio that does nothing like that. And that part I think is I said there are no truths, but I think that part is true. Anyway, it's a fascinating discussion. It's a fascinating thing to talk about because it's, as I said, nothing is always true for everyone. You might find examples of rare instances where that's not. And another reason why it's kind of a hot topic is because people invest their whole lives into this. And that's why I can't really say like there's a definitive rule because every place is going to have a different kind of a standard. What's true at Blizzard is not going to be true at Valve. Just as much as you might be really valuable in one place for your unique contribution, but another place is going to say, well, sorry, we just don't see the value in you at all. And that's just going to be everywhere that you go for your whole life, especially if you're in a field as subjective as art. These are some of the topics that have come up just recently, and it just got me to thinking about it, and I wanted to kind of get that conversation going, throw out some of my perspective on it from my years of experience and whatnot. If you found that you disagree with this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can drop those in the comments field, or you can jump in on the Discord and join in on whatever we might be discussing today. I'm in there. I at least pop in for a little bit every day. You can follow the link in the text field below the video and jump on in. There's a lot of people sharing their artwork there, getting feedback. The one thing I'm going to ask you, dudes, it's a cool environment. It's very focused on helping each other and building each other up. If you got a crummy attitude, you're gonna get 86, brother. But if you're gonna be cool, just I would love to have you. Showing on by. Of course, if you're wondering about the painting that I've had going or the several drawings that I've had going in the background, I did an illustrated novel recently, a novella. It's about 20,000 words. It's the story of a boy who falls from the sky and he has to go on this perilous journey to find out how to control his supernatural powers. It's called The Beast of Tuxa. And you can read that story and check out all the artwork in a PDF format, which is free over on my Gumroad channel. As if I haven't talked about it enough, I'm super pumped. I love this book. I love that I'm just wrapping up the final touches on it now, so you can read the ebook. And I've got a print edition coming up pretty soon too, which you can find out more about in a coming video. All right, dudes, that's it for me on this one. I'll catch y'all mañana ban. And bella ciao, baby.